You're listening beside the monument traditionally called the Tomb of Seneca, along the Appian Way in Rome. Everything beneath my voice was recorded at this spot. The insects are real. The birds that occasionally rise above them are real. The evening is doing all of this without any help from us. The monument has carried Seneca's name for a long time, though it may never have held him. His villa stood near this 4th mile, and somewhere close to here, an officer came from Rome with an emperor's decision. Tonight is a sleep story about that evening. You do not have to prepare for it. I have one hand on the brick and plenty of time. I'll do the sitting for both of us. Come along, drifters. The heat is leaving the road slowly, and the grass has found its evening voice. You just lie where you are. Before we settle in, a small favor or two, the only ones I'll ever ask. Somewhere under this episode there's a place to leave a word. Tell me where you're drifting off from tonight, or where in the Maritimes we should listen next. I read everyone slowly, the way I do everything. And if you'd like to find your way back here, follow the show. Think of it as leaving a lamp lit in the window for yourself. That's the whole favor. Now, no more asks. The rest of this hour belongs entirely to you. You might wonder what a man who puts his hat on an old Roman monument does when he finally goes home and tries to sleep. I keep a small kit by the bed, a strip across the nose so the breath runs quiet, dark glasses for the last hour so the screens lose some of their authority, a guard for the teeth because the jaw can carry an argument long after the rest of us has resigned, a little magnesium with the last glass of water. The whole list is written under this episode, right at the top for anyone curious. Not promises, mind you, just what I use. The rest of it is an old road, a living field of sound, and one Roman supper that did not end the way anyone at the table expected. Now let the bed take your weight, all of it. You've carried yourself through the whole day, and that job is finished. Let your hands fall where they fall. Let your legs be done. They aren't needed tonight. The brick is holding my hand, and the bed is holding you, and neither of us has to earn that arrangement. If my voice becomes just another sound here, mixed in with the insects and the occasional bird, that's the idea, working. You don't owe these words your attention. The road is old enough to carry them without you. Tonight, I want to tell you what happened when Nero's sentence reached Seneca at dinner. Not the polished death of a marble philosopher. The actual long evening with soldiers outside, friends crying, a wife refusing to leave, writing tablets kept shut, a physician trying one thing and then another, and an old body taking its own time. Seneca had spent years writing about the first shock of fear and the part of us that answers afterward. Then fear came through his own door, wearing a uniform. That's the story. Everyone who sat in that villa has been at rest for nearly 2,000 years. Nero's order has no force left in it. Nothing can go wrong for any of them anymore. They keep the room for us because some nights a thought arrives in much the same tone, and it helps to remember that a commanding voice is not always a command. Perhaps that is why you are awake. Something in the mind has stopped asking and begun assigning. Go back, check it again. Remember exactly. Make certain before you rest. You may already have answered. That usually buys a little quiet. Then the instruction returns with one word changed, which is enough to reopen the entire office. A frightened mind is industrious that way. Give it one desk and by midnight it has founded a department. The difficult part is that it borrows your better qualities, your care, your conscience, your wish not to miss the thing that matters. So, the order sounds responsible, and ignoring it feels irresponsible. We will not settle every question tonight. We are going to a Roman villa where the order was real, the fear was real, and the next choice still remained a choice. Seneca had spent the last years of his life trying to become less available to Nero. You may remember the earlier story. He had offered back the estates and asked to retire. Nero answered with praise, embraces, and a refusal. It is hard to leave a court when the emperor insists on loving you in public. Seneca went home and withdrew anyway. The morning crowd stopped at his door. He travelled less. He said his health was poor, which was true enough, and that his studies required him, which was truer. He ate plainly, wrote letters, and tried to make himself smaller in a city where everybody knew the size he had once been. A former tutor to the emperor cannot become private by wishing. He can only become a famous man who is usually at home. Then, in the year 65, a conspiracy against Nero broke open. The plan had gathered senators, soldiers, officers, and men who liked the idea of courage more than its timetable. Under questioning, the names began to come. One witness supplied another. An old visit acquired a new meaning. A closed door became suspicious because somebody had once knocked on it. The plot took its name from Piso. A man called Natalis said he had gone to Seneca on Piso's behalf and asked why Seneca would not receive him. Seneca's answer at the time had been ordinary. He was ill. He wanted quiet. Friendship between them would help neither man. In Nero's Rome, an ordinary answer could become treason simply by surviving until the wrong morning. Seneca had just returned from Campania and stopped at a villa near this part of the Appian Way. He sat down to dinner with Paulina, his wife, and 2 friends. There would have been servants moving in and out, lamps being tended, dishes set down, the familiar small work that keeps a house from noticing history until history is already indoors. Outside, soldiers formed a ring around the villa. The first officer to enter was Gavius Silvanus, a tribune in Nero's guard. He carried questions, not yet a sentence. Power likes to begin with questions. They make the person at the table participate in what is being done to him. The food stayed where it was. The evening, having been ordinary a moment before, waited to see what it had become. Silvanus asked whether Natalis had visited. Seneca said he had. Had Piso complained that Seneca kept him away? Yes. Seneca had been unwell and wanted rest. He had not cultivated Piso's friendship, and his own safety depended on Piso remaining safe. It was a careful answer. Seneca had made a career out of careful answers, and suffered from several of them afterward. This one did not flatter. He added that Nero knew perfectly well he was not a man who could make civility look natural. Silvanus listened, but his report would carry something stranger than the words. He watched Seneca's face. The old man showed no alarm that the officer could see. He did not ask for death. He did not act as though death had already been decided. So Silvanus returned to Rome with an answer and a face. Nero was less interested in the answer than in the face. Had Seneca shown fear? Had he said anything that suggested he meant to die? Silvanus said no. The old man had spoken evenly. No tremor in the words, no visible sadness. A face is a poor place to look for the whole truth of a person. Nero used it anyway. He was not weighing innocence. By then, innocence had become one of the less useful facts a Roman could possess. The emperor ordered Seneca to die. No hearing, no public accusation, no trip back into the city where he had spent his best and worst years. The man who had once prepared Nero's speeches would receive his last instruction through men who preferred not to repeat it. Silvanus did not go straight back. He found Faenius Rufus, another senior officer, and asked whether the order must be obeyed. This would have been a more impressive moral stand if Silvanus had not already brought half the machinery with him. Still, the hesitation matters. Rufus said yes. Obey. He too was tangled in the conspiracy, and had reasons to fear every room he entered. One frightened officer consulted another, and the emperor's sentence came out the other side unchanged. Silvanus returned to the villa. He could question Seneca to his face, but he could not make himself deliver the final words. So he sent in a centurion. Nero had enough authority to end a life. It took an emperor, 2 senior officers, and a third man at the door to make anyone feel innocent while doing it. The centurion came in while supper was still on the table. I keep the table in the room because old deaths are too easily cleared of ordinary things. A cup with a thumb mark on it. Bread nobody would finish. A chair moved back in a hurry. One friend still holding the expression he had worn before the door opened. The centurion told Seneca that Nero had ordered his death. The sentence was short. Its consequences were not. Paulina ceased to be a woman having supper with her husband and became a wife at the edge of losing him. The friends became witnesses. The servants became attendants to an execution. Seneca became, all at once, a man with very little time and several things he still wanted to do. His first request was for writing tablets. He wanted to alter his will. That tells us more about the living man than a speech about death would. He thought of property, gifts, dependents, and the people who would wake in this house after he did not. A will is one of civilization's quieter arguments with mortality. The body ends, but the cupboard still belongs to somebody, and somebody must decide who. The centurion refused. Nero had ordered a death, and apparently felt the need to supervise the furniture as well. Seneca had written for courts, the Senate, an emperor, friends, and generations he would never meet. At the final table, he was not allowed one line on wax. The tablets remained shut. He turned to the people instead. Since he could not leave the gifts he intended, Seneca told his friends he would leave them the only thing no officer could steal, the pattern of his life. It was a grand Senecan sentence. He had a weakness for arriving at plain truth in formal clothes. The plain truth was that they knew him. They knew the exile, the return, the years beside Nero, the money, the letters, the flattery, the withdrawals, and the mornings when the door stayed shut. They had watched a man teach simplicity from a large house, and then spent his last years trying to reduce the distance between what he wrote and how he lived. It was not a clean pattern. Clean patterns are usually made after the person is safely dead. Seneca offered them the knots as well. A life can be useful without becoming innocent. The friends began to cry. Seneca asked what had become of all their rehearsals for adversity. Where were the teachings they had repeated together? Who in that room had expected Nero to grow gentle at the end? He grew stern with them. Philosophers often become brisk when somebody else is weeping, and Seneca had practiced longer than most. But he was not trying to win an argument. He was trying to leave his friends standing. He'd been refused the will, so he used the materials still at hand, memory, affection, and the old lessons they had claimed to believe. Perhaps a hand on a shoulder would have done as much good. We are allowed to think that. He had spent his life reaching for words first. On the last evening, he reached for them again. Then he turned to Paulina, and the teacher's voice changed. He embraced her. He asked her not to give herself over to endless grief. She had known his life, he said, and could carry the consolation of having shared it honourably. It is a thin gift to offer a wife who wants the husband instead, but it was what he had. Paulina said she would die with him. She would not accept a future arranged by Nero around his absence. Seneca tried to persuade her to live, then stopped persuading. He said he would not deny her the example she had chosen, and that her courage might be the finer one. Love had entered the room with its own impossible demand. "Hold me here! Let me come! Save me! Do not leave me!" None of the answers stayed right for more than a moment. They opened the veins in their arms together. The fact belongs in the story. We need not make a picture of it. Paulina weakened. Seneca did not. He was old and lean, and his body moved slowly toward the death the emperor had assigned it. The room had prepared for one kind of ending, and received delay instead. Seneca watched Paulina and became afraid that her suffering would break his composure. He asked that she be taken to another room. A door closed between them. Painters would later give this evening splendid cloth, noble profiles, and enough clean space for everybody to look heroic. The closed door is harder and more convincing. Seneca could face his own body more steadily when he did not have to watch hers. That is not marble courage. It is the ordinary limit of a man who loved someone in the next room. The order did not empty the villa of work. It changed the work. Servants carried water and cloth. Friends moved where they were asked, and then discovered there was nowhere useful to stand. The centurion had delivered his sentence, but he remained attached to its consequences. Somebody had to report that the emperor's will was being carried out. Seneca, meanwhile, called for his secretaries. Even here, with the room altered and Paulina beyond the door, he wanted words taken down. This was the habit beneath every title he had held. When pressure arrived, Seneca made sentences. Some had saved people, some had excused Nero, some had travelled farther than any Roman army. He did not know which sort these final words would be. He dictated because dictation was still possible. The secretaries wrote for as long as he could speak. The final discourse was known afterward, which is why the account of that night does not repeat it. Then it vanished. We have the shape of the scene and none of the sentences. The old man speaking, the secretaries bending over their work, pages leaving the room, readers somewhere receiving them, and then the long carelessness of centuries. I am almost grateful for the loss. A surviving final speech would tempt us to use it as a tidy key for an untidy life. We would print the best line and place it over the table, as if the whole evening had occurred to produce a quotation. Instead, we have the work. Nero closed the tablets. Seneca found people who could listen. The words went out by another door. The body still did not finish. Seneca had the veins in his legs opened as well, and the delay continued. His friend Stoic was there, a physician who had known the household and knew what Seneca had kept for an extremity. Seneca asked for hemlock, the poison associated with the death of Socrates. He drank it. It did not work as expected. His limbs were already cold, and the poison did not move through him. A philosopher can prepare his symbols carefully and still find the body has not received the program. One ending had failed, then another. The secretaries still had their pages. The friends were still in the room. Paulina was still alive beyond the door. An imperial order had been perfectly clear, and almost nothing that followed it was. At last, they helped Seneca into heated water. He took a little in his hand, scattered it toward the servants nearest him, and offered it to Jupiter the deliverer. One small ceremony made from whatever the room could provide. No temple, no public priest, warm water, and the people who had been carrying it. Then he was taken into the hot bath. The steam grew heavy around him, and there the long death ended. Seneca died. Not quickly, Not without fear, because nobody in that villa could have known the inside of him well enough to promise that. He died among hands, doors, cloth, pages, medicine, and water. Philosophy did not lift him out of the room. It gave him work to do while he remained inside it. Years earlier, when a grand funeral would have suited both his wealth and his reputation, Seneca had left instructions for something smaller. His body was to be cremated without ceremony. The household followed the old direction. The man who had written speeches for an emperor went to the fire without a public speech of his own. His last dictation did not survive. The will was never altered. No procession repaired the evening. I think the plainness fits him better than a monument would. He had spent years being too visible, then years trying to disappear from the palace's view. In death, at least, the crowd was refused. Nero had made the sentence public business. The household made the burial private again. A few people, a quiet fire, and the Appian Way continuing past the house. Paulina survived. Nero ordered that she be kept alive, not because mercy had arrived late, but because her death would have made the evening worse for him politically. Her servants and the soldiers bound her arms and stopped the bleeding. She lived for several more years. The old account remembers that the loss stayed visible in her pale face. So the Last Supper did not end for everybody when Seneca died. Paulina had mournings afterward. The two friends had the memory of being scolded while they cried. The secretaries had pages that would be lost. Statius had the cup that failed. The servants had warm water, stained cloth, and a house to put back into order. History leaves the room. Somebody still has to clear the table. That is one reason I do not want a fearless Seneca. A fearless man would be less useful here, and less believable. Seneca had spent years describing the body's first rebellion. A face can flush, the knees can weaken, the heart can strike the ribs before the mind has said yes to anything. A trained speaker can go cold before people he has addressed 100 times. A soldier can startle at the signal he expected. Seneca did not call these movements moral failures. They arrived too early for character. They were the body's old machinery taking up its post. What mattered came next. The first movement was not a verdict. It was the knock at the door. A person still had to decide what room the visitor would be given. He had written about this before the centurion ever found him. In letters to his friend Lucilius, Seneca warned that imagined suffering often charged us in advance. We endured the event once, if it came, and then many more times while rehearsing it. He did not pretend the future was safe. Rome would have made that a foolish teaching. He asked a smaller question. Is the danger here, in this hour, or has the mind sent tomorrow's officer ahead? On his last evening, the danger was here. Soldiers ringed the villa. The tablets were refused. There was no honest way to rename that. Even then, fear did not perform every action for him. He asked, spoke, embraced, dictated, offered water. The sentence entered the room, but it did not become the only thing the room contained. This is where the evening becomes larger than its death. Nero controlled the road around the villa. He controlled the centurion, the closed tablets, and the time allowed. He could narrow Seneca's choices until they were cruelly small. He could not make them disappear. Seneca still had a friend in front of him, a wife within reach, secretaries who could take words into another day, servants frightened near the bath, a little water in his hand. None of those things defeated Nero. This is not that kind of story. The emperor's order was carried out. What Seneca did was refuse to let the order appoint itself ruler of every remaining minute. He kept finding the next human thing, even when the next human thing was awkward, insufficient, or terribly small. He did not do all of it beautifully. He was sharp with friends who were losing him. He consented to Paulina's choice, then sent her away when the sight became too much. He reached for the death of Socrates because Seneca, to the end, liked history to notice when he entered a room. That does not spoil the evening. It gives us a person to sit with. A compromised former courtier, a brilliant writer, a rich teacher of simplicity, an old husband, and a frightened body can all occupy one chair. Stoicism did not turn him into one clean thing. It gave the many Senecas a way to keep moving together when the door opened. We do not need a saint. We need a man whose philosophy survived contact with the man he actually was. What did that survival look like? Writing tablets requested, friends addressed, Paulina embraced, secretaries called, a final offering made from bathwater. Plain actions, though none of them were easy. The great teaching arrived as a sequence of small jobs. This is usually how philosophy looks when it reaches the floor. It stops sounding like philosophy. It becomes where to put the chair, whom to speak to first, whether to open the door, what to do with the 5 minutes that remain. Seneca had written sentences large enough to cross centuries. On the final evening, his freedom was measured in gestures. Nero could decide the length of the night. Seneca kept deciding its contents. That distinction is narrow. For a person under real power, narrow does not mean imaginary. Nero lived for 3 more years. He thanked the gods for saving him from the conspiracy, rewarded informers, punished enemies, and continued the expensive work of being feared. Then the support around him gave way. The emperor who had sent officers down the Appian Way fled Rome and began listening for officers sent after him. Power is very convincing until the men carrying it decide to stop. By then, the villa had returned to other uses or none. The dishes from the final supper were gone. Paulina had lived into another season. Wheels kept finding the worn tracks on the road. The Appian Way had already carried kings, consuls, armies, prisoners, traders, and ordinary people hoping to be home before dark. One more imperial message did not impress it for long. Seneca's letters kept moving. They were copied by hand, lent, misplaced, found, translated, argued over, and set beside beds he could never have imagined. Roofs fell, libraries burned, alphabets changed their clothes. The letters continued. Nero had the largest delivery system in the world. He could place soldiers around a country house before supper was cleared. He could not make an ordinary letter stop travelling. The final dictation disappeared, which is unfair and somehow fitting. We lost the words Seneca prepared for history and kept the ones written on ordinary afternoons, when death was still theoretical and the post had to leave on time. Those quieter sentences came down this road in the other direction. Nearly 2,000 years later, one of them met a man with his hand on warm brick. Before we go there, stay at the villa for one last moment. The emperor's order had arrived as the largest fact in the house. By morning, it was no longer moving. The people were. Paulina breathed. Servants walked from room to room. Friends carried memory away. Secretaries carried pages. Smoke lifted and thinned above the fire. That is not a happy ending. It is simply what endings have to share the world with. The road opens, the cup is washed or broken, somebody notices the bread. Fear tells us that when it arrives, everything else has stopped. Usually the smaller things continue beneath it. A body, a task, a person close enough to answer. The fear may be the loudest thing. It is rarely the only thing. And the sentence inside your own mind is not Nero's sentence. It can feel official. It can tighten the same chest and send the same quick signal through the limbs. It can say, "Settle this now, or you are in danger. Settle it again, or you are careless." But there are no soldiers around your bed. No centurion has entered. The thought may point toward a real task for tomorrow. It may be old machinery sounding the alarm because alarm is what it knows. You are not required to decide which at this hour. Seneca's evening does not make your trouble small. It makes the grammar easier to hear. Fear speaks in commands because commands move bodies quickly. The voice can arrive. The next action still waits to see who chooses it. That is all the teaching I want to take from the villa. Not that fear is false, not that a steady person remains still inside, not that philosophy makes a hard thing painless. Seneca's last evening refuses all three comforts. It gives us something more modest. The first shock can be honest, powerful, and involuntary without becoming the author of the next minute. The minute may hold fear and still contain another thing. A request. A hand reached toward someone. A page dictated, a cup of water. Or, on an easier night, the choice not to reopen a question until daylight. The mind may continue issuing orders after that choice. Ancient emperors did the same. Repetition made them exhausting. It did not make them eternal. By then the brick beneath my hand had cooled a little. I had come here with a private trouble of my own. It did not resemble Seneca's danger. No soldiers, no emperor, only a fear that knew how to return as an instruction. Answer this, check that. If you stop, perhaps the next thought will be the important one. With my hand on the brick, I pictured soldiers on the Appian Way, far more of them than the story needs, marching toward the villa. I could almost give them the rhythm of the road. That part was imagination. Fear likes a full parade, even when one officer would have done. The monument did not tell me whether everything would be all right. Good stone is sparing with reassurance. It stayed under my hand. Warm at first, then less warm. The insects kept up their ridiculous committee in the grass. A bird interrupted and was ignored. My fear remained present, which was disappointing but not surprising. I did not defeat it there. I met it without giving it the rest of the evening. That is the whole private story. Nearly 2,000 years after Seneca tried to meet an order on this road, his old distinction had reached somebody carrying a very different kind of trouble. I cannot control whether fear arrives. I can still choose what I give it next. That minute, I gave it brick, evening, insects, and a hand that stayed where it was. The old road makes room for that kind of unfinishedness. It does not ask whether every traveller crossed it calmly. It keeps the marks of carts, repairs, rain, roots, marching feet, and people who probably spent the whole walk worrying about something that never happened. Fear wants a private road, cleared of every uncertainty before we take one step. No road has ever offered that. What it offers is the next piece of ground. Seneca's piece was terribly small by the end. Yours tonight may be the width of a bed, the weight of a blanket, and the decision not to hold court after midnight. That is enough ground for now. Morning can reveal the next part. Roads are patient about corners. Minds are less so, but the road does not consult them. If there is real work waiting for you, it will still be real in daylight. A call will remain a call. An apology will remain possible. A door can be checked when you are standing in front of it. Postponing an action until action is possible is not neglect. It is scheduling, a word with very little grandeur and a great deal of usefulness. The frightened mind may object. It may say a careful person would keep thinking, but care has always depended on the hour. We sleep before we drive. We wait for an office to open. We turn on a lamp before inspecting the floor. A thought does not become responsible merely by exhausting the person who has it. It can travel beside you without holding the reins. So let the villa close now. The centurion is gone. The tablets are shut. Paulina is breathing in the next room. The secretaries have carried their pages away. The bath has emptied of steam. Whatever could be done in that house has been done for a very long time. From here the Appian Way can darken, and my voice can grow smaller. Nothing important is going to happen for the rest of this hour. The story does not require an answer from you. The order expired. The road stayed open. You don't have to follow any more. The words know the way on their own from here. We will leave the night's papers at the roadside, one at a time. Begin with the order to go back and check. Do not open the whole case. We need only the words on the outside. Go back, make certain. Is the thing here, in the room? Can anything useful be done without leaving the bed, waking someone, opening an office, or beginning the same circuit again? If not, place the order on the brick beside mine. We are not proving it wrong. We are not promising it will never return. We are giving it an address for mourning. The Appian Way has kept stranger parcels overnight and lost very few of them. Now the memory asking to be made exact. A word somebody used. The order of 2 moments. The expression on a face you could almost recover if you walked through the room once more. Memory does not keep minutes in Roman stone. It moves. Edges tend to weather. The mind notices the change and calls for an inquiry. Take only the request itself. Remember perfectly. Does perfect remembering belong to this hour? No. Then put the request beside the first. The road beneath us has lost nearly every footstep ever made upon it, and remains a very good road. A night can be complete while one memory keeps its blurred edge. Now the worry wearing your decent coat. A good person would continue. A careful person would be certain. Somebody who truly cared would not rest while a question remained. The coat fits because it was borrowed from you. The instruction beneath it may still be fear. Care does things when things can be done. It calls, repairs, apologizes, returns, and tells the truth, when the only available action is another journey through the same thought. Care may wait for daylight. Fold the coat over the brick. Morning can check the pockets. Tonight your hands do not have to keep wearing it merely to prove they are kind. Now, the ordinary unfinished task, the message, the form, the arrangement, the 5-minute job that brought its relatives and occupied the evening. Is the person waiting beside the bed? Is the office open? Has tomorrow lent us its light? No, the task exists, its hour does not. Put it with the others. It becomes less impressive beside a Roman road, which is good for it. Morning can pick it up without ceremony. You do not have to keep an ordinary task warm all night, because it happens to belong to you. One more paper. The demand that you become calm before any of this counts. That one is clever. It can turn rest into an examination and keep you awake grading the result. Are you calmer yet? Did the last breath work? Has the fear gone? No answer is required. Sleep has never responded well to supervision. The body settles by degrees, and some nights it carries a little weather all the way through. Place the demand for calm beside the others. You may rest while unconvinced. You may sleep while one room in the mind is still moving chairs. A household can go dark without a unanimous vote. Look at what is beside the road now. The check, the memory, the decent coat, the unfinished task, the demand for calm. Nothing has been destroyed. We have only sorted it by hour. That is less dramatic than defeating it and much easier on the furniture. The centurion brought Seneca something that belonged to his moment, terrible and unavoidable. These papers are not standing in your room with soldiers behind them. They can remain here. You are off duty from certainty until morning. The mind may object, it may draft an appeal, let it. The court is closed, the clerk has gone home, and nobody remembered to give fear a key. The light has lowered along the Appian Way while we have been talking. The brick beneath my hand is giving back the last warmth it kept from the day. The chorus continues in layers, one close to the road, another farther out in the grass. A single bird occasionally lifts above it, makes its point, and leaves the committee to continue without minutes. The monument stands. It does not need the correct name in order to cast a little shadow. The road does not need to remember which officer crossed it. Let the room around you be that forgiving. Edges can soften. Names can loosen. The papers know where they are. You do not have to keep checking the pile. Bring your attention to the hands, not to improve them, only to feel how much work has already stopped. Let the fingers rest open, or curled, whichever choice they made while the story was moving. The palms have nothing left to hold up for inspection. Let the wrists be heavy. Let the forearms give their weight to the bed. The elbows have no message to deliver. The shoulders can come down by the smallest amount, or remain where they are without being wrong. A first movement may still pass through them. A tightening, a wish to reach, it can move through. The hands do not have to follow every signal they receive. Let the forehead be unfinished. It does not have to smooth itself to prove the night is working. The small muscles around the eyes have spent enough time narrowing, searching, and returning to the same place. They may grow heavy without finding what they wanted. Let the jaw remember it is not required to form an answer. Teeth apart, tongue resting where it falls. If a sentence continues behind the face, it may continue there. The face itself can come off duty. It has represented you all day, often in meetings it did not enjoy. It need not make the case through the night. Now the chest, where fear often arrives before it has found words. You do not have to order the heart to slow. It knows more about continuing than either of us. You do not have to take a perfect breath. The next one is already being arranged without a committee. Let the ribs move as much as they move. Let the bed receive the back when the breath leaves. The body may still be listening at the door. That is old work, older than Rome and older than philosophy. It can listen. No messenger is coming through tonight. Down through the belly, where unfinished things sometimes gather and call themselves weight. Let the weight be weight. It does not need to become a lesson. The mattress can take it without understanding it. Let the hips spread into the bed. The thighs have no road to walk. The knees have no order to brace for. Let the calves give up their small readiness. Let the ankles become ordinary. At the feet, the day ends. They carried you farther than the mind has recorded and received very little praise for it. They can stop without submitting a report. Only the breath now, and even that is not a task. Let it come without asking whether it is calm enough. Let it leave without checking whether the last one worked. In, the body receives what arrives. Oh, out. The body returns what it can. There is no number to reach, no hidden mark awarded for doing this beautifully. The insects do not pause between calls to judge the quality of the evening. They continue because continuing is their work. The breath knows the same trade. It has been at it longer than the frightened clerk. The papers are beside the road. One may already have lost its wording. Another may remain perfectly sharp. Both can stay where they are. Sharpness is a sensation, not an appointment. The brick is cool now. The grass is carrying the same full chorus. Somewhere beyond us, Rome is finishing another day and beginning its usual attempt to keep tomorrow organized. You have done what belonged to this hour. The rest may remain unwritten. The Appian Way will still be here in the morning, and morning has always been better supplied with light. The villa is quiet. The tablets are closed. The friends have gone home. The road is open again. Your room may follow in its own time. Fear may arrive. It does not receive the next minute automatically. The minute may remain here with the bed and the breath. The question may remain. The body may rest before the answer comes. Nothing else is required tonight. Fear may arrive. It does not receive the next minute automatically. The minute may remain here with the bed and the breath. The question may remain. The body may rest before the answer comes. Nothing else is required tonight. Good night, Drifter. Sleep well beside the old Appian Road, while the insects keep the brick and the grass company. The papers are down, the court is closed, and the road will know what to do with morning when it comes. You may rest,